The silence of the mansion was broken by a muffled scream coming from the second floor. Eduardo Carvalho froze behind the half-open closet door, his heart racing as he watched through the crack. He had deliberately returned early from his business trip, but something made him stop before announcing his arrival. An instinct he couldn't explain. "Do you think your father cares about you?" Isabella's voice echoed through the room, cold and cruel. "He only keeps you alive because it would look bad for business if the son of the great Eduardo Carvalho died." Eduardo felt his blood run cold. Through the small opening, he could see his son Gabriel, only 8 years old, curled up in the adapted hospital bed. The boy was pale, thinner than the week before, his sunken eyes revealing sleepless nights. Leukemia was already a heavy enough burden for that child to carry. "Please stop," Gabriel's voice came out weak, almost a whisper. "Stop? You want me to stop?" Isabella laughed, a sharp sound that made Eduardo clench his fists. "I take care of you every day, clean up your mess, put up with your crying. And what do I get? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because everything is yours, isn't it? The inheritance, the name, the attention." The woman Eduardo had met 6 months earlier, elegant and compassionate during a charity event, had completely disappeared. In her place was an unrecognizable person. Isabella moved closer to the bed, and Gabriel shrank even more. "Do you know what will happen when you die?" She leaned in, her face inches from the terrified boy. "I will erase you. I will take your photos off the walls, donate your toys, make your father forget you ever existed. And finally, he will be mine." Eduardo had to bite his own fist to keep from screaming. His legs trembled, the urge to break down that door almost uncontrollable. But something held him there. He needed to understand the extent of it. He needed to know how long this had been happening. "My dad, he'll be back soon," Gabriel tried, his voice breaking. "Your father is in Tokyo, idiot. And even when he's here, he's working. He doesn't want you. Nobody wants you. You're a burden, dead weight that costs millions in treatments that don't work." That was when the door opened softly and a figure entered the room. Beatriz, the housekeeper who had worked in the house for 15 years, carried a tray with medications. Eduardo saw her expression change instantly as she took in the scene. "Sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Isabella," Beatriz said, her voice firm but respectful. "It's time for Gabriel's medicine." Isabella stepped away from the bed in a brusque movement, putting back on the mask of affectionate concern she wore in front of others. "Oh, Beatriz. I'm glad you're here. I was talking to Gabriel about how he needs to be strong." "Of course, ma'am." Beatriz placed the tray on the small table beside the bed, but Eduardo noticed something strange. She looked at Gabriel in a different way, as if she were communicating something silently. As if she knew. "I'm going downstairs to take an important call," Isabella announced, smoothing her designer dress. "Beatriz, make sure he takes all the medications." All of them understood. "Yes, ma'am." When Isabella left, Eduardo watched Beatriz approach Gabriel. She gently touched the boy's face, wiping away a tear that was rolling down. "It's all right, my angel. She's gone now." "Bea. I'm so scared." "I know, my love. I know." Beatriz hugged the boy carefully, as if he were made of glass. "But I promise I will protect you. No matter what happens." Eduardo felt his own tears fall. How had he been so blind? So absent? While he was building empires and closing multimillion-dollar deals, his son was being tortured inside his own home. And the only person who truly took care of him was someone he barely paid attention to. Beatriz began sorting the medications, but Eduardo noticed that she discreetly slipped some of them into the pocket of her apron. What did that mean? Was she sabotaging the treatment as well? Or was she protecting Gabriel from something worse? "Bea, why do you hide the white pills?" Gabriel asked softly. "Because those aren't medicine, Gabriel. They are things that hurt you. But don't worry, I've already spoken to someone about it." Eduardo's heart pounded. He needed to know more, to understand everything. But at that moment, he heard footsteps approaching again. He retreated further into his hiding place, his mind spinning in 1,000 different directions. Isabella returned to the room, phone in hand. "Beatriz, you can go. I'll stay with him now." After the housekeeper left, Isabella typed something on her phone and smiled. A message appeared on the screen, but Eduardo couldn't read it from where he was. She looked at Gabriel with disdain. 3 more months, at most. After that, everything will be mine. Eduardo closed his eyes, the cruel reality finally settling in completely. He wasn't just witnessing psychological abuse. He was facing something far more sinister. And Beatriz, somehow, was the only barrier between his son and a terrible fate. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment telling us what you think and which city or country you are watching from. That night, hidden in his own house, Eduardo made a decision. He would not only expel Isabella. He would destroy her completely. But first, he needed to find out exactly what was happening. And for that, he would need Beatriz's help. Eduardo waited until 3 in the morning to leave the guest room where he had taken refuge. The mansion slept in sepulchral silence, only the hum of the central air conditioning breaking the stillness. He went down the stairs barefoot, each step measured with precision so as not to make any noise. The kitchen light was still on. Beatriz was sitting at the table, a steaming cup of tea between her hands, her eyes fixed on nothing. She looked exhausted, her shoulders curved under an invisible weight. When Eduardo appeared in the doorway, she flinched violently, spilling some of the tea. "Mr. Eduardo. I thought, they said you were in Tokyo until Friday." "I thought so too." Eduardo pulled out a chair and sat down in front of her. "We need to talk, Beatriz. And I need you to be completely honest with me." The woman lowered her eyes, her hands trembling slightly. She was 52 years old, gray hair pulled into a tight bun, and a natural dignity that had always impressed Eduardo. But at that moment, he saw fear in her eyes. "About what, sir?" "About what is happening to my son. About Isabella. About the medicines you hide." Eduardo leaned forward. "I saw everything today. I was there, hiding. I heard every word she said to Gabriel." Beatriz closed her eyes, and a single tear ran down her cheek. "Thank God. I prayed so much for you to find out. So much." "How long has this been going on?" "Since she moved in here. 3 months." Beatriz wiped her face with the back of her hand. "At first, I thought I was imagining things. Small malicious comments when no one else was around. Gabriel becoming quieter, more frightened. But then I started noticing other things." "What things?" Beatriz stood up, went to a tall cabinet, and removed a cookie box. Inside, there was a brown envelope. She placed it on the table, her hands still trembling. "Recordings. Photos. Notes. Everything I managed to gather over the last 2 months." Eduardo opened the envelope. There were several photos of Isabella taking medications from a locked drawer in her bedroom, talking on the phone with expressions that ranged from anger to malicious satisfaction, and documents that appeared to be medical records. But it was the flash drive that caught his attention the most. "What's on this?" "Audio recordings. I installed a recorder in Gabriel's room after he told me he had nightmares every night. He couldn't tell me what was happening because he was afraid. She threatens him constantly." Eduardo connected the flash drive to his phone with trembling hands. The first file began to play. Isabella's voice was crystal clear, every word a sharp blade. "If you tell anyone, I'll say you're delirious because of the illness. No one will believe a sick boy against me. And your father? He barely looks at you. He's already chosen me." Eduardo had to pause the recording. Nausea rose in his throat. How had he been so stupid? So blind? "There's more," Beatriz said softly. "Much more. She records videos of him crying and sends them to someone. I once saw the reflection on her phone screen. A man." They laughed together. "Who is this man?" "I don't know his name. But he came here twice while you were traveling." She said he was a cousin, but the way they touched each other. Beatriz shook her head. "And there's something worse, Mr. Eduardo. Much worse." Eduardo felt his stomach churn. "Tell me everything." "The white pills she insists Gabriel take are not on Dr. Enrique's prescription. I researched it on the internet. They are potassium supplements in extremely high doses. For someone with compromised kidney function like Gabriel, this can be fatal." "My God," Eduardo ran his hands over his face. "She's trying to kill him." Slowly, So it looks like a natural progression of the disease. Beatrice opened a notebook filled with meticulous notes. Everything is recorded here. Every dose she tried to give. Every one I managed to prevent. But sir, I can't be with Gabriel 24 hours a day. When I'm in the kitchen or doing other tasks, she takes advantage. Eduardo looked at that woman he had always treated with distant cordiality, but never with real attention. She had risked her job, perhaps her own life, to protect Gabriel. While he, the father, was too busy building an empire. Why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you go to the police? And say what? That the fiancé of the most powerful man in the city is mistreating his son? That I, a servant, have evidence against a high society woman. Beatrice laughed without humor. Who would believe me? I needed something undeniable. And I needed you to see it with your own eyes. You knew me better than I thought. I've worked in this house for 15 years, Mr. Eduardo. I saw you build everything from nothing after you lost your wife. I saw how you threw yourself into work to avoid feeling the pain. But I also saw how much you love Gabriel, even if you don't know how to show it. Eduardo remained silent for a long moment. My wife, when she died, I promised I would give Gabriel everything. But I only gave money. Expensive treatments. Specialists. And I forgot to give the only thing he really needed. There's still time, sir. Is there? Eduardo looked at her. After everything I let happen? Gabriel is still alive. There is still hope. But we need to act fast. Beatrice leaned forward. That woman is dangerous. Much more than she appears. And she has a plan. I heard her talking yesterday about something that is going to happen next week. Something definitive. Eduardo felt his blood run cold again. Do you know what it is? No. But I have a terrible feeling. Beatrice touched his hand. Mr. Eduardo, we can't just throw her out. She will come back. She will take revenge. We need a better plan. At that moment, looking at the determination in the eyes of that brave woman, Eduardo understood something. He was not alone in this battle. And perhaps, for the first time in years, he had found someone he could truly trust. Then let's make a plan, he said, his voice firm for the first time that endless night. And we will destroy this woman before she destroys my son. The next 5 days were the hardest of Eduardo's life. He had to pretend he was still in Tokyo while hiding in his own mansion, watching Isabella's every move through the security cameras that Beatrice had discreetly repositioned. Every time he saw the woman enter Gabriel's room, his blood boiled. Take a deep breath, Mr. Eduardo, Beatrice whispered during their secret meetings in the pantry. If she realizes we're investigating, she'll speed up her plans. We need to be smarter. Eduardo had hired a private investigator, Daniel Ferreira, a former federal police officer with an impeccable reputation. The man worked day and night and brought back information that turned horror into absolute fury. The accomplice's name is Tiago Mendez, Daniel explained one rainy morning, spreading photos across the table of the secret office they had set up in the basement. He poses as a businessman, but in reality he's a professional con artist. Long criminal record. Fraud, identity falsification, criminal association. He met Isabella 2 years ago at an illegal casino. 2 years. Eduardo frowned. But she said we were destiny. That she met me by chance at that charity event 6 months ago. It wasn't by chance. She researched you for months. She knew everything about Gabriel, about his illness, about your fortune. Daniel showed bank records. Look at this. She has nearly 2 million in debt. Gambling, loans with loan sharks, maxed out credit cards. You were the perfect target. A rich widower, sick child, emotionally vulnerable. Beatrice entered the room carrying coffee. She had become an integral part of the operation, the eyes and ears inside the house while Eduardo remained hidden. She just left for the spa. She'll be gone for 3 hours. Beatrice served the coffee with steady hands. It's our best window today. Perfect. Daniel opened the laptop. I installed spyware on her phone yesterday when she left it in the kitchen. I got access to all the messages. And what I found is worse than we imagined. Eduardo leaned in to see the screen. The messages between Isabella and Tiago were explicit and terrifying. How much longer? Tiago. A few weeks. I'm increasing the dosage. The doctor is already worried about the sudden deterioration. Isabella. What if the father suspects? Tiago. Impossible. He barely looks at the child. When Gabriel dies, I'll comfort him, marry quickly, and in 6 months I'll be a widow too. 2 birds, 1 stone. Isabella. Eduardo had to step away from the table. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. Beatriz gently touched his shoulder. I know it hurts. But now we have proof. Real proof. There's more, Daniel continued. She has already consulted 3 different lawyers about inheritances and wills. She asked specifically about marital rights in case of death of minor stepchildren. She was preparing for this legally. That woman planned everything, Eduardo murmured, his voice filled with hatred. From the very beginning. Yes. But she made a mistake. Daniel smiled for the first time. Tiago is stupid. He recorded a conversation between them where they openly discussed the plan. He was keeping it as insurance, in case she tried to cheat him later. I managed to recover the file. The investigator played the audio. Isabella's voice was cold, calculating. The boy is fragile. A few more doses and the renal system will collapse completely. The doctors will think it's a complication of the leukemia. No one will investigate. Eduardo will be devastated, vulnerable. That's when I close the trap. Quick marriage, full access to the accounts, and then, well, accidents happen. She was going to kill both of them, Beatriz whispered, horrified. Father and son. Eduardo closed his eyes. The woman who slept in his bed, who kissed his face every morning, who acted like a devoted mother in public, was planning to murder his entire family. The betrayal was so deep it hurt physically. Mr. Eduardo, Daniel said seriously, we have enough material to arrest her now. We can call the police today. No, Eduardo opened his eyes, and there was something different in them. A cold, relentless determination. I want more. I want her caught in the act. I want there to be no chance of escape, no legal loophole, no possibility of bail or a deal. You want to catch her red-handed, Daniel concluded. Exactly. Beatriz told me something definitive is going to happen this week. We're going to find out what it is, and we're going to be ready. I want cameras at every angle, recorders in every room, and I want the police 2 minutes away. It's risky, Beatriz warned. If something goes wrong. Nothing will go wrong. Eduardo took her hand. Because you'll be there. Protecting Gabriel like you always have. And this time, I'll be there too. No longer hidden. No longer absent. Daniel spent the next 2 days installing equipment. Tiny cameras, directional microphones, tracking devices. The mansion turned into an invisible technological fortress. Eduardo also took other measures. He moved Gabriel to a different room, installed special locks, and gave Beatriz an emergency device connected directly to the police station. On the night of the 5th day, Beatriz ran into the basement. Her face was pale. It happened. I heard her talking to Tiago on the phone. Tomorrow night. When Gabriel takes the 9 o'clock medicine. She's going to use a massive dose. She said this time she won't fail. Eduardo felt the world stop. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours. Then tomorrow is the day, he said, his voice strangely calm. Daniel, coordinate everything with the police. I want a full team on standby. Beatriz, do you know what to do? Yes, sir. I'll switch the medicines like I always do. Gabriel will be safe. No, Eduardo shook his head. This time, I want you to let her give the medicine. What? Beatriz's eyes widened. But sir, it will be a placebo. Daniel will prepare identical capsules with nothing but starch. Gabriel won't be in real danger, but Isabella will believe he is. It will be the perfect trap. Attempted murder on camera, witnessed, indisputable. Daniel nodded slowly. It's brilliant. And cruel. She deserves cruelty, Eduardo replied. For every tear my son shed. For every night of terror he endured. For every poisonous word. Tomorrow, Isabella will fall. And she will fall hard. 9 p.m. Eduardo was positioned in the closet adjacent to Gabriel's room, exactly where it had all started 5 days ago. But this time, he was not alone in his vigil. Daniel coordinated 3 plainclothes police officers stationed outside, and every room in the house was being monitored in real time. Beatriz entered the room carrying Gabriel's dinner tray. The boy was sitting on the bed, flipping through a superhero book. He seemed better in the past few days, less tense. Beatriz had told him the truth that afternoon, explaining that his father was there, protecting him, and that everything would soon be over. "Bea, did my dad really come back?" Gabriel asked softly, his eyes shining with cautious hope. "Yes, my love. And he will never leave you alone again. I promise." The door opened and Isabella entered, a perfectly rehearsed smile on her face. She wore a white dress, her hair loose, the image of a devoted bride. Eduardo felt nauseous. "Beatriz, you can let me feed Gabriel today. I know you have a lot of work in the kitchen." "Of course, Mrs. Isabella." Beatriz gave a slight bow and left, but Eduardo knew she was just outside the door, ready to intervene if necessary. Isabella approached the bed, stroking Gabriel's hair with false tenderness. The boy stiffened under her touch but forced himself to remain calm as Beatriz had instructed. "How are you feeling today, dear?" "Better," Gabriel replied, his voice small. "That's good." Isabella took the tray and began arranging the medications. Eduardo watched her every movement through the crack. Her hands moved with practiced precision, separating pills, filling a glass of water. But then she did something different. She glanced quickly at the door, ensured it was closed, and took a small bottle from her pocket. "Today will be special, Gabriel. Today you will take a new medicine that will help you a lot." Gabriel looked at the white capsules she poured into his hand. There were 5, large and intimidating. But Dr. Helena didn't say anything about a new medicine. "It's a surprise. Your father authorized it. It will help you sleep better, feel less pain." Isabella forced the capsules into the boy's hand. "Take them all at once. Quickly." Gabriel grabbed the glass of water, his hands trembling slightly. Eduardo felt his heart race. It was time. The door burst open abruptly. Tiago entered the room, and Isabella's expression shifted from surprise to irritation. "What are you doing here? We agreed you'd stay at the hotel." Change of plans. Tiago locked the door, and Eduardo saw that he was carrying something in his jacket pocket. "I got a strange call today. Someone asking about you, about us. I think we're being investigated." "Impossible. Eduardo is in Tokyo." "Are you sure?" Tiago moved toward the window, peeking through the curtains. "Because I swore I saw someone following us yesterday." Isabella turned pale. "Even if he is, it's too late. The boy will take the medicine now, and in a few hours, he'll be dead. They'll think it's a complication of the illness. I've prepared my version. Eduardo will return to a funeral." Gabriel let out a frightened sob, and Isabella turned to him with cold eyes. "Shut up. You should be thankful. I'm doing everyone a favor. Nobody can stand your crying anymore." That was too much. Eduardo stormed out of the closet like a hurricane. The door slammed against the wall with a crash. "Nobody can stand what anymore, Isabella?" The woman froze, her face draining of all color. Tiago tried to draw something from his jacket, but Daniel was already behind him, pointing a gun. "Police. Hands where I can see them." Doors and windows opened simultaneously. 4 police officers entered the room, weapons drawn. Tiago was immobilized in seconds, while Isabella remained paralyzed, looking at Eduardo as if seeing a ghost. You should be." "In Tokyo?" "No. I was here. Watching everything. Hearing everything. Recording everything." Eduardo walked to Gabriel and hugged his son tightly, as he hadn't in years. The boy collapsed in tears, clinging to his father. "And now, everyone will know what kind of monster you really are." Isabella Santos and Tiago Mendez, announced Police Chief Clara Rodriguez, entering the room with handcuffs, are under arrest for attempted qualified homicide, fraud, criminal association, and psychological torture of a minor. "That's a mistake." Isabella screamed, her mask finally falling. "He has no proof. He can't prove anything." Eduardo grabbed his phone and played the recording of the conversation Daniel had recovered. Isabella's voice echoed through the room, cold and calculating, describing in detail how she planned to kill Gabriel and then Eduardo himself. Isabella collapsed. Her knees gave out, and she fell to the floor, sobbing. But these were not tears of remorse. They were pure anger. You don't know who you're dealing with. I have lawyers. I have connections. And I have indisputable evidence of an attempt to murder my son. Eduardo pointed to the hidden cameras. All filmed, recorded, witnessed. You will spend the rest of your life in prison. Both of you. Beatriz entered the room, tears streaming down her face. She ran to Gabriel and hugged him along with Eduardo. It's over, my angel. Truly over. As Isabella and Tiago were dragged out in handcuffs, still shouting empty threats, Gabriel looked at his father. You came. You really came to save me. And I will never stop being here. Eduardo kissed his son's forehead. Never again. Through the window, Eduardo saw Isabella being pushed into the police car. She looked up one last time, and her eyes met his. There was no charm, no beauty, no seduction. Only distilled hatred. But Eduardo felt no pity. He felt only cold satisfaction. Justice. The trap had worked perfectly. 6 months later, the mansion had a completely different atmosphere. The oppressive silence had been replaced by laughter, conversations, and soft music flowing through the halls. Eduardo was sitting in the garden, watching Gabriel play with a golden retriever they had adopted 3 weeks earlier. The trial had been swift and decisive. Isabella received 25 years for attempted qualified homicide and torture. Tiago got 20 years as an accomplice. The evidence was so overwhelming that even the most expensive lawyers couldn't create a plausible defense. The case made national headlines, but Eduardo protected Gabriel from exposure, using his influence to keep the boy's identity secret. Dad, look. Thor got the ball by himself. Gabriel shouted, radiant. I see, champ. He's very smart. Eduardo smiled, a genuine smile that months ago had seemed impossible. Gabriel was in remission. The doctors had found a new, more aggressive treatment protocol, and the boy was responding exceptionally well. His hair had started to grow back, he had gained weight, and most importantly, the sparkle had returned to his eyes. Beatriz came out of the house carrying a pitcher of fresh lemonade and homemade cookies. She no longer wore her uniform. Now she dressed in casual, comfortable clothes. Eduardo had insisted on changing her role in the house. You're not just an employee, Beatriz. You saved my son. You saved my family. You are family. She had resisted at first, uncomfortable with the change, but eventually accepted. She was now officially Gabriel's legal guardian in case of emergency, with her name on all important documents. Eduardo had also tripled her salary and set up a substantial retirement fund for her. The lemonade is perfect, Bea. Gabriel ran to the table, the dog chasing him. You make the best lemonade in the world. And you're the best cookie eater in the world, she laughed, ruffling his hair affectionately. Eduardo watched the interaction, his heart warmed. In recent months, he had learned more about being a father than in all the previous years. He drastically reduced his workload, delegated responsibilities, and established an inflexible rule: nothing was more important than Gabriel. Dad, Dr. Helena said that if my tests keep looking good, I can go back to school next semester, Gabriel said, biting a cookie. Do you think I'll be able to make friends? I've been away for so long. You'll achieve anything you want, son. And I'll be there to support you every step of the way. Daniel appeared at the gate, waved, and walked over to them. The investigator had become a close family friend, visiting regularly to check on Gabriel. I brought news, he said, accepting a glass of lemonade. Isabella tried to appeal the sentence again. It was denied. They also found out that she had other targets before you, Eduardo. 3 widowed men in different cities. All backed off before she could execute any plan. You were lucky, Beatriz commented softly. Very lucky. It wasn't luck. Eduardo looked at her with gratitude. It was you. Your courage, your vigilance. If it weren't for you, I would have lost Gabriel. I would have lost everything. Beatriz shook her head, emotional. I just did what any decent person would do. No. Most people would have stayed silent for fear of losing their job. You risked everything for a child who wasn't even your legal responsibility. That's not just decency. It's heroism. Gabriel stood up and hugged Beatrice tightly. You're my hero, Bea. My real superhero. The woman melted, silent tears streaming as she returned the embrace. Eduardo joined them, and Daniel discreetly took a photo of the moment on his phone. I'm going to frame this, the investigator murmured, smiling. Later, when Gabriel was asleep and Beatrice had gone to rest, Eduardo was alone in his office. He looked at the framed photo of his late wife on the shelf. I failed you, Amanda. I failed to keep our promise to take good care of our son. But I swear I've learned. I've learned that money doesn't replace presence. That professional success is worth nothing without emotional connection. That the most important people are often those society teaches us to ignore. He picked up another photo, taken that afternoon. Gabriel smiling, Beatrice at his side, both hugging. It was a different family than he had imagined, but it was real, solid, and full of genuine love. Eduardo had created an institute in Beatrice's name, focused on protecting vulnerable children and giving a voice to domestic workers who witness abuse. She initially refused the honor, but he insisted. The world needs to know that heroism has no color, class, or fancy surname. Heroism is doing what's right when it's hardest. And you did that every day. His phone rang. It was a message from Gabriel. Dad, thank you for coming back to me. I love you. Eduardo replied immediately, I will never leave again, son. I love you more than anything. He looked out the window at the garden bathed in moonlight. The mansion that once seemed like a cold mausoleum now pulsed with life. There were laughs echoing through the halls, children's drawings on the fridge, toys scattered across the living room. It was messy. It was imperfect. It was absolutely perfect. Eduardo had learned the most important lesson of his life. Wealth is not measured in net worth, but in shared moments, in sincere hugs, in being present when you are needed most. And that sometimes, the angels who save our lives don't come dressed in luxury, but in aprons, with calloused hands and immense hearts. Beatrice had been invisible to him for 15 years. Now, she was the most important person in his life, besides Gabriel. And he would make sure the world knew it. If you enjoyed this story of overcoming injustice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave in the comments what you thought and which city or country you're watching from. Your interaction helps us bring more inspiring stories like this. The true transformation of Eduardo was not in destroying Isabella. It was in recognizing Beatrice. In truly seeing Gabriel. In learning that being present is worth more than any fortune. And that lesson,